I'll call the August 21st, 2023 meeting of the Fairport Industrial Development Agency to order and open a public comment portion of our meeting. If there's anyone like to address the board. And hearing no one, seeing one, no one will close public comment and move to approval of minutes. Now we have two different minutes here to approve. The first one is our April minutes. So we've been trying to get a quorum to do that, and I believe we have that quorum today. Jennifer was not part of that meeting, but Donna, Rob, and Kevin were here. So, so is there a motion to approve those April meeting minutes?
I will move approval.
I'll second.
And I will just note that that was a special meeting. That was not the regular meeting of the FDA. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So that passes. Okay, so now we're moving on to the June meeting minutes that were not available to us last month. And all four of us that are here were present at that meeting. So is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I so move. I'll second.
Comments, corrections, discussion on those minutes? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We will be seeing the July minutes next month. Is that correct? Or
Yes, July and August next month.
July and August.
God knows.
Okay. So the minutes. All right, next we'll go to resolution 2023-08, authorizing payment of the IDA bills.
I reviewed the bills and I would move to pay.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Any questions or discussion on any of those bills? Don, anything to add to them? I heard you asking questions of Martha, so.
I was just asking about the Josh Lott landscape payment is a installment payment.
Okay.
1 of 6.
Anybody else have anything? Or Martha, do you want to add anything to any of those payments?
We had our first payment to our photographer pursuant to his contract with
Okay.
the website.
Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let's review our cash balances for the IDA. As you can see, as we've talked about in our previous meetings, we are just setting aside some money, just a placeholder for parking lots improvements on the north side.
Right, the CD matured today and we rolled it over in anticipation of, possibly paying out in October. We'll have another maturity in the investment portfolio of 109 at the end of October. So hopefully, but we do have adequate funds otherwise. So
Okay.
Not concerned.
And the Tompkins report is provided to us, as well as our P&L for IDA. So is there any comments or questions from any of the board on any of the financials? Jennifer, you following along with all this stuff? You starting to get a handle on
I
our-
am slowly
our
but surely
financials?
following along. Yes, thank you.
Certainly have any questions, please ask. All right. Move on to old business. Let's start with the Northeast Main Street parking lot with Andrew and Peter from BME here this evening. Unfortunately, guys, we were a little late. Our board packages got tied up in the village server, so we haven't seen this for very long to get a good handle on it. So your help in walking us through it's going to be great. So.
Okay. Do I have to come up there?
No,
Thank you.
just speak loud enough that we can
Yeah,
capture.
so the engineering part, my part's easiest in the fact that it was last month you kind of gave us the direction of what is the preferred layout. to do that. So we're moving forward with creating the construction documents with the target that they would be completed by the Labor Day holiday, so within the next 2 weeks, such that, and we'll provide those with the intent to get those out to bid in the month of September, when we'll allow a 2-week bid window, so that latter part of September, we should have the bids back so that we can review those. So that's what I have. Any questions on that, please feel free to ask. And then Andrew's going to walk you through, which I think was, I'm going to say the outstanding item, which was, okay, with adding the additional parking to the south, how much does that leave us between this parking lot improvement and the creek? And are we getting anything usable, measurable, or whatever? And I think that was in July when he was here, that was kind of what you had asked him to look into, and that's what he's here for too.
So I'm interested in timeline, and you mentioned that, being able to bid late September. Would that be bid independently, or would the work that we're talking about now that Andrew's going to talk about, park-like stuff, would that be included in a same package? Or
I'm going to answer that in the fact, we were under the understanding we were just going to bid the parking lot.
okay,
But if you decide this evening that you wish to include that, we can incorporate that. That's,
because I'm just thinking it could be the same contract. I mean, ideally,
right.
you would have one contractor.
yeah,
do it.
and that won't be a heavy lift for.
And that would be as an alternate to the
Correct.
construction. I do want to make note, though, our contract with you, we signed for the design services. We
Right.
have not signed for the contract documents, the bid, and all of that. So
Correct.
just from a housekeeping standpoint, I need the board to authorize me to go ahead and
Yes.
sign that.
Okay. So if that were to happen, you bid the end of September bid review, contract award, we have the ability to have a special meeting for contract award.
Right, and I would target that, what our goal would be is that that's happening around October 1st. Okay?
The award of the contract?
That's when we would like to bring the bids to you. After our review and everything, said,
Yeah.
here we go. Because we hope to put it out to bid after the Labor Day holiday, 2 weeks to bid, so we should get them back the 3rd week of September.
How's the market this year?
The best way I can determine it, it's loosening up from the standpoint that we are hearing contractors, they're starting to look for work. As in they see work, projects they had through the year are, where's the backlog? They're not carrying a lot of backlog right now, and they're starting to call and ask if we have things coming up.
Now, we have not received an estimate, right? All we ever worked off of was, the
concept.
kind of concept pricing of different options, but those concepts did not include concrete work.
Right.
Lighting probably by are we approaching lighting by others, right?
We're
Well,
waiting
yeah.
for FMC to
Yeah,
provide.
we've requested, I say we, Martha and I was there, but it was requested an estimate from Fairport Municipal for the lighting. We would provide with the contract documents for review, include the estimate then for the construction cost estimate.
At what point would we see that?
That would be available for your September meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
So question to the board, I mean, the estimate is the bids are gonna determine what we spend. The estimate is going to tell us more market condition. Their estimate is based on what they've seen this year and what is currently happening. And if we only get one bid or you only get two bids and they're 30% higher than the estimates, then that could create a problem. So I think we do want an estimate, and that will be for evaluation purposes primarily.
And if I may, I think what's important in all of this is, while it's desirable to get this work done sooner than later, fiscally, if you bring up a great point, Kevin, is if we only get one bid and it's 30% high, do you choose to rebid it for the spring of 2024? You know, so that's really what we'll want to be looking at in September is that.
Yeah, we've said all along, we'd like to get it done in the fall.
Right.
I've always had in the back of my mind that this could be a spring thing too.
That's right. But yeah, right. Because it's about getting it done right,
Mhm.
you know, versus just to get it done fast.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, any questions for Pete on the engineering and what we're talking about with the? Okay,
Could I get a motion to sign the contract?
oh, great.
So moved.
I'll second.
And this is for,
This would be for contract documents and construction at $2,000 and construction administration at $3,000.
Yeah, and you can defer the construction administration until you award the bid.
no, was this,
Yeah.
was this,
Okay.
we'll award it now. If
Okay.
we don't do it, we don't do
Yeah, exactly.
it. So Rob and Jen, okay, any questions regarding that? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're going ahead with that. Excuse me.
And you'll be back September and
Yes.
October.
Both.
September and October.
Yeah.
So what I had provided to Martha, hope you received, was just kind of snippets of what this area, the remainder of the area can be. And as we know, we've had we don't have a large area. What we were originally talking about a number of years ago was a much, much larger park area, the dog park and the whole bit. This will become more like a trail system and a trail through the area. A suggestion I would make is it be a stone dust trail that can kind of wind its way along the creek bank. And we have one and or two locations where we can actually get almost down to water elevation. Provided a little bit of a snippet of a boulder outcropping so we could step down and get close to the creek. So parents and kids can get down there, feel the water, touch the water, that type of thing. But I think it could just be a meandering trail through that area. Jen, on the plan, we actually did show what a stormwater management might look like. I mean, I know you had questions about that
Yeah.
Earlier. But in the design of that, that can be, it's ecologically sensitive, but it's also can be filled with some nice planting materials. A suggestion would be to try to eliminate the invasive species as best as possible in this area. We have Japanese knotweed that's in there. There is some rose in the area, some buckthorn. If we can get rid of that and then get an understory of native materials in as part of kind of the riparian buffer planting along the creek side, it can be a pollinator area, a pollinator walkthrough. And we can even take it to the level of informing residents of what this area is, that it is an ecologically sensitive area. And we could even put signs up, and I gave a couple of examples of other signs that have been placed along trails of this nature. But a trail area that would have some benches incorporated with it to meander along by Thomas Creek is kind of the thought process we have at this point in time. From a planting standpoint, I know we have to be a little bit cautious and careful of the amount of plant material we put in, what plant material we put in. But we would like to try to propose native plants that we can get in almost cutting form and or rooted form, not potted plants, not bulb and burlap plants per se, but be able to go in there with a relatively inexpensive material to put into the ground and cross fingers and hope that grows and that takes over. And try to minimize. I know maintenance is going to be a concern. Try to minimize the maintenance as best as possible. Basically, I think between the edge of the parking down to the trail might actually be a mown area, maybe a lawn area, and from the trail down to the creek bed could be more of that planting area.
Maintenance free.
think, and Kevin, you would ask about, can some of that material be maintained that is there, the trees?
Yeah, and I was gonna bring that up again.
And
Do a selective clearing, because even if it's not the most desirable tree that's growing there, it is proved itself to be native.
Yeah.
And, just give it a more natural
and the root system that already is in existence today helps to hold that back
stabilizes.
and helps to stabilize. And if we can just get some underplanting underneath, there's an awful lot of concrete, there's rubble, there's concrete, there's a bunch of stuff that just cleaning that out cleans up that site. I think that's maybe one of the bigger elements of putting that trail in is just cleaning it up. Get rid of the garbage. You do have that little tent that's down there.
That way the Section 8 program. So.
But I know when we had originally taken a look at the parking lot previously, we came up with a pretty extensive planting plan. I did include that as right on that was our planting plan previously. And I would say we would dumb this down quite a bit, so we're not doing too intensive of a planting with maintenance in mind. Okay. But that's kind of the thought process.
The first one is not what? So is that the very first one that you just held up is previous?
This was the original planting plan that we had when we were trying to go through the trees for trips, funding opportunity. Okay. And we do have, and I actually provided kind of a plant list that we were using.
And that plant list goes with that sketch.
That is correct.
Okay.
But I would also suggest we have some of these selections as part of our new planting plan, because these are selected for a certain purpose along the riparian buffer and on the free edge. Okay. As I said, dumb this plan down a little bit, if you will. It won't be as extensive of a plan. But the thought, even that image right at the top, we get that in the eastern portion of the parking lot, actually. There is that tree area right down here. And we can actually get a little bit of a trail that comes through that. It's actually one of the neater portions of that entire property. Because there are some nice.
That's right near the house, right?
It's right on the backside of that house, but we can get a little curvilinear trail that goes through that area to get you right down by the creek. So if you're coming down from the east and coming down to the west, you can go through that little area and then get down to the creek and something like that. Incorporate all that. It's nice little. There's some little elevational changes in there, but it's kind of. And then I would suggest we have a great location right down in here where we could put in that access to get down to touch the water.
The boulders. And
yes, exactly. Yeah, and we use something like a dolomite boulder that we can get from dolomite, bring in and stack along the edge and create a kind of an informal step down.
Can I just clarify? So this image, the landscape planting example on page 14, with our new plan where we're expanding our parking south, pretty much anything between that proposed stone dust trail and the parking would not be part of this project. We've only got left over the stuff from the trail down to the water.
No, I think what we would do from the edge of the parking down to the trail is we would have this more of a lawn area.
But the parking is double stacked now, so we're losing 20 extra feet, right?
Yes, this was, I only added in this planting plan as example of what we had done with the materials, the materials that were selected. We'd still like to choose from some of this selection, still have a little bit of a sense of the planting from
I get what you're saying.
From the trail down to the water's edge.
Right. So maybe it's more on that page 15 there. What's really going to be, it's going to be lawn between the parking, it'll be lawn to the trail, And then between the trail and the creek is where, so it's more, thank you, I've oriented page 15, a better understanding about what we'll actually end up with.
Yeah, and
Okay.
right around wherever the stormwater management area goes, there'll be some plantings that'll be incorporated in that generalized area as well.
Okay, thank you.
But that'll be the easiest, especially for snow removal, snow storage, maintenance perspective. Then that can be a whack and mow type of situation up to the trail. And then from the trail down to the creek can be a little bit different.
We've used canal stone. That's some of the big boulder blocks from canal. Do we have a source for that? at one
It came
point?
out of the wall of the canal when they did a repair.
Yeah,
Mhm,
and somebody had surplus stone that we had access to,
mhm.
if that's still.
Oh, there's.
I'm just
still
saying as an alternative to boulders, maybe if we use, canal rock.
You're right,
those
there
are
is
better.
quite a supply at the end of the parking lot down
Yeah,
there.
if we can utilize that material, that'd
We
be
would,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think we would.
Yeah.
More, John?
Did you foresee the path connecting to the sidewalk to this parking area?
The
Yes.
west end.
Yes, on the western end, come down the sidewalk and then the trail connect and
It
go down
connects.
toward the water.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then dies sort of as we get behind the house, right? Okay,
Correct.
okay.
And love to go out there and kind of walk it, and we can walk and put that trail in. We can get an idea of what that length of the trail is going to be for the bid document, if you will.
Mhm.
But then when it comes to actually putting that in, we're not going to survey every single tree that's there. But we can eyeball it and put stakes in and put flags in. This is where we want it to go through.
Yeah.
We know that it wants to be a 3 or 4 foot wide trail, and be able to stake it out in that fashion.
Figure out what to keep and.
Yeah.
So dimensionally from the, a roundabout, from the lawn side of the trail down to the creek, how wide is that? Just ish?
There's a difference. There's different areas. In one or two sections, we're dealing with maybe about 15 to 20 feet.
Okay,
The further east we get, it expands even further. We're dealing with 20 to
Yeah.
30 feet.
okay.
And it really is the tightest point really is right in this area right here. So our existing parking area stops here. So it's a little bit past there. It's this zone right here.
And that's where you envision maybe that boulder?
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's 15 to,
15 to 20 feet in width about in that location, and then it gets wider as you go further to the east.
Yeah.
And the stormwater is to the west, right? Okay, that's where that's gonna go.
Well, we have two different areas that we might do stormwater. Right now, conceptualizing where we're going to get the drainage and how we're going to direct drainage. We might actually have some on the eastern end as well as on the western end.
Okay, cool.
We do have from Main Street back to where we're starting the new project, we have a stormwater management area that was facilitating the drainage going into the creek. So we kind of have to replace that. And then we also have to now take on the additional with what we're going to be doing with this project.
I just have to ask, we're close to the creek, we're doing stormwater management. Are we needing approvals that is going to change anything with our time frame? Does this have to go? Is it going to require seeker? Is it going to require DEC to
Right
weigh
now,
in
we
on
don't.
this?
We won't need any DEC permits because we're not encroaching on any of the regulated areas. The creek itself is regulated, but we're well outside of the mean high water level, which is the demarcation point
So
of the
that's-
regulation. The one thing we have to be sure of, and we've discussed this with DPW already, just because Jason Kaluza is also the village floodplain administrator. We do have the floodplain
That is in a
floodway.
floodplain.
So we have to be sure we're not showing a net increase of fill within the reconstruction area. So that's why we're gonna just work with existing grade per se. That's the one thing we have to do, but right now the design approach is to maintain existing elevations in that regard. So with regards to the stormwater permitting and seeker, so I'll have to check whether this is an unlisted action or a type 2 action because of the size. Okay.
The disturbance.
Yes, because to our advantage, the gravel area is considered by DEC to be impervious area. So we're not really increasing the impervious area that much. We may be under the type 2 threshold, which means then we don't have to, we'll just do an EAF and you're able to acknowledge that it's a type 2 action. If not, we'll bring that in for the September meeting where you just need to make your neg deck on that. But from the stormwater standpoint, the design, Thomas Creek is waterways. We just have to mitigate the water quality. And through the village being an MS4, a municipal system, they are responsible for the review and approval. And we've been working with Jason about that also, as he is the MS4 officer for the village of Fairport.
Sorry to interrupt you.
I don't think I have anything else.
You like it?
I like it. I like the graphics you provided too are really helpful in envisioning it. I really like the micro habitat concept and that sign. I think that's a neat way of, it's kind of a good description of what we're trying to do. I feel like, like it's small, but it's important, even though we're not able to keep a lot, it's nice. And the informative signage, I think, is an interesting thing for us to consider too in there, because that type of thing, being a pollinator pathway or whatever else we can do to connect it, is neat. So I like it.
Andy, what would be the biggest component of the cost of this? It's going to be the removal of what's there versus we're not putting a lot back in,
I
right?
think the largest cost is still going to be the actual creation of the pathway.
The stone dust trail?
Yeah. And cutting that in and then bringing in stone dust.
Oh.
And doing that construction portion of it. I think the close second would be the invasive plant material removal. Unless we're clear cutting everything, which we do not want to do. We need to be selective in how we take materials out.
And the debris removal is part of that too.
Yeah, and the debris removal, right? And I'm not rightly sure how much debris is back there. I can only see what's on
I don't think anybody is.
So I could be,
Trees, whoop.
exactly, so I could be speaking out of line here, not knowing what's underground. But
Yeah.
I think the stone dust trail is probably the largest cost.
Okay.
The benches are dependent upon the bench styles that are chosen.
Mhm.
The ones that are on the canal, those are $800 to $1,000.
Yep.
Each.
Okay. Yep.
And if we're going to be utilizing the same thing, those can add up
Sure.
pretty quickly as well.
Is the stone dust trail the one that's like at the sundial?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's-
Throughout Thomas Creek. Yeah.
And installed properly, that can be an ADA accessible way. That is tamped to a point where you can roll wheelchairs over it. Small wheels can go over that, and it's considered an accessible way. We would like to try to make all of this accessible.
And the grade shouldn't prohibit that.
Yeah, we keep everything underneath 5% or less. And that's where we just kind of meander that trail through, basically following a contour line on the ground. And basically that's what you do, is you follow that contour, and that creates that meander of that pathway for you.
Andrew, is there any concern with the potential of that stone dust getting into the creek? In particular, like in the area where the boulders are going to be, where we'd be inviting people closer. Is there any issue with that in that space?
I can't say that it would not occur, that some of the very, very fine dust materials could wash away. But the stone dust, as soon as it's installed and compacted, that first wash, it typically doesn't wash after that point. It stays in place. It's not like a sand that can roll and keep on rolling. It's an angular stone which interlocks itself. So as soon as it's wetted and tamped, it really starts to hold and connect with itself. So it's not gonna just wash away with a rainstorm type of situation. The dust that I'm speaking of is after that first initial installation, there's going to be some extremely fine powders that are in your stone dust, just like in a concrete, for example. That dustiness will wash away. But as soon as that occurs, then you're left with it, the more granular pieces that stick together very, very well.
I'm thinking impact to the creek too.
No, that impact should be minimal, if negligible, very, very negligible.
And maybe, before your answer, I had my mind thinking, would it make sense to use those old stones from the canal and make that almost, I don't know how slippery it would be, but make that almost kind of a stone deck instead of putting cinder or the stone dust down in that area where you're inviting someone to touch the water or put a little fishing pole in the water, whatever it may be. Keeping the stone dust even further away from the creek by doing that.
You
I don't know if that's
may,
feasible or not.
you may run into accessibility issues. We want everybody to get to every location along here. By doing something like you're suggesting, it would have to be a very, very tightly interlocking pavement pattern, which might become extremely difficult to achieve.
So you're not thinking that where I see these boulders here, that circle, I kind of envision that being a step down.
Right.
And we could actually have it so that there might be a small portion that could be a ramp to get down there as well.
Okay.
I would tend to steer away from trying to add a large boulder than putting filling in between them because of accessibility issues more than anything. The gapping, the evenness of the surface. If we truly want to have this accessible, we need to find something that we can design and install in a smooth surface.
Yeah, and then I'm
That's possible.
all for that. I guess when I look at this visual, I envision a step down, which is going to create accessibility issues anyways. I was picturing it as kind of like a foot, 10 inches, 8 inches, whatever that step down would be to this landing area, for lack of a better word, that would be fringed by stones, but there would be the stone dust in the middle of this kind of oval of stones that I see on this visual. So whether we make that the step down, the material that someone's stepping onto, I'm not sure if I'm understanding fully how it would be impacted if it's all stone boulder versus stone fringe and that stone dust in the middle as a filler.
It's more than anything, it's the smoothness of the surface. And if we are trying to design to the ADA regulations, for example, you cannot have gaps between stones that are greater than a half inch. Okay. You cannot have differences in elevation of greater than a quarter of an inch between pieces. So as soon as we start talking about a natural stone that has natural changes to the surface of it, even if we were to put those up closely, we run into a situation where it's a very bumpy surface, which then may not meet those criteria.
Gotcha.
Are you envisioning a ramp here also?
I would envision somehow to get down there with a wheelchair, you'll be able to have one section of the trail come around and maybe have a little bit of a ramp going down to.
That's fine. So I was
Okay.
understanding.
Personally, I just think if you,
Yeah.
in building that kind of laying stones out there, I think that almost takes away from the natural character of what we're trying to create here at the meander.
Yeah,
You're worried about this no desk being closed.
I'm just trying to,
Yeah, I mean,
thinking of
it's
ways
done
we can
everywhere.
mitigate
Yeah,
this.
have you been down to, I mean, one of the more recent ones, not in this community, unfortunately, but down the Brickyard Trail, for example, right? Which is an extensive trail system. That is all snow dust. And it is all compacted snow dust, and it goes right through a wetland area. And there's no issues with impact to the water quality or anything of that nature.
There's not a pollutant here.
No, it's a natural, it's a stone. It's a natural stone property.
Had some experiences on Fellows Road Park trails with the cinder path there. When rain comes, nobody's riding bikes in this section, obviously, right? But the idea of same thing with the canal path. There are grooves that get set in there that where things do move, at least in my experience. This is going to be a different level of traffic, obviously, but I have that kind of visual in my brain to keep seeing things move around pretty well, and would hate to have stuff pollute the creek, right, while we're trying to improve this area, and also become an issue as far as folks being there in accessing in a wheelchair, what have you.
If done correctly and installed correctly, it can be a very, very viable service.
But overall, I mean, I appreciated Martha kind of pointing out the idea of the visual on 14 being very, very different than what we will have now, right, as far as the access to the park space. But I think it'll be a good functional space. It makes sense to do holistically with the parking lot improvements. And yeah, the signage too. I mean, I think signage incorporating the highlights of the area, what someone might see in that space, similar to the wetland area, right? There's some signage that would help bring people closer to what they're actually looking at, appreciating the detail.
Yeah, education is key.
Totally.
A lot of people don't understand. Why didn't they just put that?
Right.
Why don't we have lawn down there? There's a rhyme and a reason. If we can, a little sign demonstrating this is what this area is supposed to be in nature. It's a good thing to educate.
One other question, the stormwater management space. Can you give a sense for what the potential would be as far as, I think you mentioned there's some plantings we could put in there or something. Can you give a sense of what that might look like? What options we might have?
It's what's out there
It's
right
what's out
now.
there today, actually.
The way that it's overgrown. Well, there were more decorative plantings when it first went in. There are two currently. We lost all the ones on the westernmost stormwater management. On the eastern one, though, nature has taken over that essentially, and it's performing quite well in what it's supposed to do. But it's what you see today, unless it's tended to.
That's what we should expect. Okay.
You know, the function of the plant material is literally to clean that water, is to take up any of the pollutants that are in water and bring them up into its feeds and into its branches. That forms a cleaning operation. It also collects debris. We're always going to find debris and anything that's floating in the water, even pieces of paper, the pieces of plastic, they're going to hopefully wind up in that zone and not in the creek. So the maintenance should be, okay, let's go pick up the paper and the plastics from that area and not try to collect it out.
Your comments?
You like it, Donna?
I like it. I like it a lot. I think it even, I can imagine that it even would improve the perception of safety in the parking lot by having all of that and then that formal way.
Oh, yeah.
As we're talking this, and I kind of promoted that we do it as one contract, and Martha said as an alternate. You're gonna really have a paving contractor and this contractor are not the same person. It's
Right.
yeah.
That's what one
So,
of my questions was.
yeah.
Who's the one contractor that does all that?
So, you know, if you did as an alternate and the Massillon Paving decides that they want to bid it, and then there's an alternate in there, so they get Wayside to do. Wayside has done other work for us out there, and still. So I don't know, thoughts on that, if separate contracts or approach it as the alternate and let that paving contractor find a subcontractor to do the alternate work? Thoughts on that?
See, it's interesting because I think you could do it as two contracts because there's a very clear demarcation line.
Yeah.
Right.
And point being then, I think by doing it that way, you broaden for both projects your net of who you could get to do the work.
So we're
So,
not paying the paving contractor to,
right,
and one
You're
more
gonna-
step in the line, I wonder,
yeah, you're gonna
They don't
pay
take
the
that.
paving
Right.
contractor or whatever contractor an upcharge to administer
Right.
the other one.
right?
So,
And we're not doing this under Davis Bacon, correct?
Correct.
You guys know that.
Is there a staging then? Should one project happen before the other? Should the trail be done first? No?
I would do the paving first.
Okay,
There's going to be some grading exercises that have to occur for the actual parking lot installation. After that is completed, then the trail can
Okay.
then be installed.
Yeah, any of these spring plantings or could they probably fall in?
Any type of shrub material can be planted in the fall and or spring. It's all about availability. I think spring would probably be the better selection. The trail can be installed in the fall and let to overwinter, but then do all of the plantings in the spring might be a very viable option. Any type of perennial, soft, tissuey material, if it's not in the ground by September
Right.
timeframe, it's 50-50 whether or not it'll actually survive through the winter time. So any of the herbaceous materials should be done in the spring. Any of the bare root materials, typically you can get into the very early spring timeframe, that March and April timeframe. That's when nurseries that do a lot of plantings and they have the 18-inch bare root stock, they'll take them up out of the ground, shake all the soils around them and put them in refrigerated containers. And that's how they continue winterization of those until they can get to a site.
You can get like more cost effective that way. It doesn't,
It's much more cost effective from a material
yeah,
pricing and actually installation as well. The installation can be done literally with a very small spade, a very small shovel.
Yeah, the other thing, the scope of the work for the linear park is not of a magnitude where you would need a regular contractor to do it with their equipment. Like you
Right.
said, Wayside or any of the numerous landscape companies would be capable of carrying out this scope of work, for sure.
when
So
do the asphalt
Thanksgiving.
stop? Thanksgiving? Oh, okay.
I did have a conversation with Andy about some of our travails with regard to our planning, and while I appreciate the beauty of what we'd love to achieve here, I'm adamantly against upgrading this to be luxurious or even nice. I think it has to all be maintained with a mower or a weed whacker. We lost, you talk about bare root plants. I'd rather spend more money and get a fully developed plant that they can't mistake as a
Oh.
weed.
I see your point, yes.
So
we've lost a
I'm,
lot of
Right.
plants
we've
for
lost
our-
thousands of dollars.
for our projects.
So I'm very, the one with that has all the blue underneath, under the understory, happy with that. That looks fine, but it's just, when we get multiple things in here,
They can't be
It's-
discerning when they go through, they're not gonna.
no. So I really,
That's
I
getting
strongly encourage the board
Yeah. Oh,
to lower expectations. This will not be a botanical garden. It won't be even close to that. I mean,
My little section will be though.
but it's, you can look, we have $25,000 of repairs and maintenance on our year-to-date.
Yeah.
Okay, so we learned a lot with the butterfly garden.
Yeah.
We did a really good job on the southwest bank, really being very thoughtful about the materials that go in there. And at the end of the
It's
summer,
held
they
up
come
well.
through
Yeah.
and with a weed whacker, and that's it. I mean, there's a couple that we've got to go out and pull, but we learned a lot. It was
The level of
expensive.
maintenance that's actually gonna happen,
Correct,
the reality of
Yeah,
that.
we're,
yes.
Okay,
it's, you know, we say we're not the town of Barrington, we don't have a parks department.
right. DPW. 's
Very
doing
good DPW,
Mhm.
does a great job, but they're just not specialists in
No.
this.
And that's,
And they're not really.
but we can
focused.
achieve something nice, but we have, I would encourage the board to keep that in mind.
Okay.
But it's-
One other thing I need to bring up is, our contract was just for the parking lot. So I will have to get you an addendum for the park design and the landscape design. Okay, and I'll have that for you for September for sure. But it's not gonna stop us from moving.
Yeah, if you can get it even before that.
Yes, I'll get
you
it
can
tomorrow.
Distribute it out so we can,
Okay,
And,
because we have 2 September meetings, don't we?
yeah, we do.
Yeah, if we're not to deal with any of this other
Right.
than
Yeah.
if we needed to take
Right.
action on
Okay.
something, we can do it at that meeting. Fair planning.
Yes,
Oh, no, that's an LBC. We cannot do that.
no, but we'll make it work. We appreciate your confidence in us that we'll
yeah,
come to agreement on a contract.
that's right,
And
vice
Mark-
versa.
Martha, your comments are well taken, understood. I mean, I think there is a way to achieve something that is nice, that can have a very low level of maintenance.
Right.
I think,
The Southwest Bank is a great example, I think. Yeah, good. Cool.
Anything else? So we don't need any further actions for them to leave
Not
here
today,
with. I think we
no.
have a plan,
Yes,
but we don't, the board doesn't need to take any action.
I don't think so. Not on this. Nope.
Any more questions, thoughts?
Appreciate it. That's great.
Then, when we'll be able to fine tune this and look at the, the particulars, if we get to signage, some of these things
Yeah.
may go into Andrew's contract as an allowance for a signage allowance.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah.
So we don't have to nail all that stuff down right now. Cool. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
David's up.
Yes. Yes. Actually, David and Peter and I had a really great meeting. So, do you want to bring us up to date, David, on your parking and
Sure.
mobility study?
We'll move over here. Let's see if I can-
Okay.
Yeah, Senator.
Yeah.
Remain seated like we're
There.
pressing the set. Yeah, so we had a really great turnout. We, at the outset, several weeks back, we developed a nice, sort of a landing page for what we were doing with this project to just initiate those that are unfamiliar with that area and what's going on and what can be done with it. We worked with Genesee Transportation Council developing what we thought was a pretty, for that area, comprehensive survey to ask people that are either employees, employers, visitors, tenants, residents, whomever that might use the cannery, leave us your feedback. And
I'd ask, did it come across your feeds? Did you see it? Did you take the survey? Anybody? Mr. Clark did,
Wife did on our behalf.
wife did, Peter did, okay.
good.
Well, we still had a great response.
So then you were part of this great turnout that, this is something that I expected. I think going into this survey, I mentioned to Martha that I expected us to hit at least 100 people, unique people to have interacted, whether they've taken the survey or commented on the map. And we did that. We surpassed that. We got 109 unique participants in this survey with 1,700 responses and some really great comments.
What was the
And-
number again?
109, right?
109.
But GTC characterized the responses as the number is divine.
Yeah.
You look,
Yeah.
they have larger active transportation projects and so forth, and the responses, it might be 43 or something, depending on the project, but I was concerned because GTC, they're a partner, and we asked them for a big lift on this. They probably, Lori Marr spent a week on it, developing a really incredible tool. It's just fantastic. But they got out of it a lot of good data as well. So it was
That's great.
mutual for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, because these are people that now they're in the database. They're in the
Yeah.
GTC database. Of course, there's all the participants and the contacts that OSIT has, but Now these are great individuals that our transportation agency here can reach out to and can help inform as it relates to future transportation and land use planning projects going forward. But yeah, if you think of this as if you're having a public meeting for trying to get this information, you might get 30 people out, you might get 40. That would be fantastic, but that's not always the case. And what kind of quality comments would you get? How would you be able to really digest them? It's tough, if you were to have it in a 2-3 hour window, maybe a 2 hour window for a public meeting. So for this thing, it was let open for almost a couple of weeks, and we just got a great feedback and great response. A lot of the responses were very sort of typical of what we expected. People were, they had the issues with the parking. Not enough parking was a very big common topic. As you might see, and I know that you mentioned that there was some lockup in the server, but we provided in the package here tonight the summary of that, this dynamic report that the website gave. Some really interesting things popped out, such as people are a little hesitant about Main Street because there's too much traffic. Traffic and speed were the two main issues that people see for Main Street, especially in this area. That's not uncommon to hear in an area like this. People generally, it was kind of interesting. There was a question on here: how long do you take to find a parking spot? Almost 38% said it's a reasonable amount of time, and then closely followed, almost 35% said too much time. So it really just speaks to you either luck out or you don't. And unfortunately, part of that question, almost 5% of the people said they failed to find a spot in lap. And so that actually speaks to one of the comments that was made by a business owner that mentioned that they have cancellations and reservations.
That was an interesting comment.
Yeah.
Like older folks that don't want to walk.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh.
So that was interesting, and that sort of speaks to another aspect that typically people would rather drive here than walk. And I think that we had a great conversation here in Mark and I the other day that there's a certain element of what kind of experience are you having going from your origin to destination here at the cannery. If you're a resident, you really feel great to walk down Main Street.
We kept as we were going through the data, there was a preponderance of residents, but they were driving.
Yeah.
So we asked how do we get the residents to walk
Oh, that's,
to the cannery?
yeah.
Someone who maybe lives 8 blocks away now moves, 5 blocks closer, and that person feels more comfortable walking. So how would we get that individual who
There's an interesting, I'm thinking now about so I live up the summit. And as I walk down, like let's say I'm walking South Main Street and I want to go to the library. You've got all these like very visible crosswalks that are in close proximity to each other with a sign in the middle of the road, right? So I know that like a driver's not going to be swerving around somebody to possibly hit me while I'm crossing the street. So I feel very safe walking because of all the markings on South Main. But that doesn't really continue on the north side of the bridge.
Right, you lose it
Yes.
between the
I didn't
tracks and High
realize
Street.
that
There are no,
until reading this and all the crosswalk comments.
I said between Woodbridge Lane.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Woodbridge Lane and High Street.
There becomes a crosswalk desert.
Yeah.
One of the great things that the DMV plan had several years back is to install 2 crossings north of the tracks, one right at the tracks there, and then one as sort of big block crossing at the parking lot of Cannery at 75 located there. So I will take a little diversion and just say that on Thursday, we're sort of at a crossroads here between what OSED is wanting to do with this project, what the village and the streetscape project is doing. They're very much in the early days of their design, looking at what has been done, what can be done, knowing that, especially for speaking to this area north of the tracks here is New York State DOT jurisdiction. Now we gotta figure out how much, augmenting we can do to get them to be on the same page as perhaps those residents might want to see for crosswalks, and what can we do, communication wise and pedestrian oriented to try to make it better for everybody. Because he's got a little bit of a different standard, as you probably experienced, but it's not to say that that's not, unachievable. We can sort of work with them to have a great
Well,
group
and
right now.
especially this data, we did it in connection to our parking lot expansion.
Correct.
But now this is valid data that can be used by others, like the
This will
village,
bolster the argument.
Yeah,
that
they
so
use.
I
as
reached
they
out
move
to
towards the
CPL.
streetscape project. They'll be able to demonstrate to DOT with this data. This is what people, how they're behaving, what they want, and so on and so forth. And even we can hopefully use this data in the interim, just to get the timing changed on the traffic signal at Main and High or something. This data was valuable, not only to us, but it will be shared widely with others, so we can continue to make these improvements.
Yeah, I had a conversation with CPL, David Hastings, who's sort of PM on this project, and he was definitely intrigued by what we've done so far today. We'd love to get this conversation going with the village and DOT and yourself.
We're doing that Thursday afternoon, right?
Doing that Thursday afternoon, yeah. Because, yeah, there's some really great coordination now that we can start to get into with them. And, the way we sort of see it is, we're sort of arguing and representing on behalf of OSED and the desires that OSED wants out of this parking lot expansion and the assets and the investments that you have there, and how can that be better and complement what's going on with the entire streetscape. Because, as we heard in the survey here, people aren't, if they don't feel comfortable walking, well, that's a streetscape issue. That's a crossings issue. That's a vilified issue. So hopefully that streetscape project will speak to that. And, this is now that informed data that they can use to hopefully address those issues. A couple of things, though, that I'll just point out, and I'll open it up to any questions you might have. So we took our traffic counts out here. We did traffic counts as well as pedestrian counts. We did it on a Friday and a Saturday during the evening times, 4 to 6. Things start to really get out there. And so from a traffic standpoint, we've got the counts there. A bit self-explanatory, but so I don't usually get into the numbers.
We're on page 22, guys. What's that?
Oh, there.
Yeah, so I don't normally get buried into the numbers. That's more of a, we're going to start doing analysis. We're going to start talking about how we need to speak to DOT. That's that data that we're going to look at. So, but what I want to draw your attention to is the pedestrian crossings. And that would be following that's on our figures, figure 8, 3A and 3B. We've got them for both Friday and Saturday. And what was really interesting was the parse, first going from north to south. Parse Ave crossings are certainly there. They're apparent. They're measurable. And people are certainly crossing there. Not a crosswalk. It is technically you can cross there. It's an intersection. But certainly crossing at an intersection without any marked crossing. So we've got a number of individuals doing that. Going further south at High Street, again, a number of individuals crossing on the north side. So that's something that certainly would be flagged for that intersection, and was certainly identified back in the 2016 plans to look at crossings on all approaches there, especially at a signalized intersection that's the most protected.
There's no crosswalk there.
No.
Not on the north side, no.
Not on the
We got
north
on the
side.
south
On
and
the
the
north
east.
side.
Yeah, and then the only approach or crosswalk that has any pedestrian countdown timers or pedestrian signals is the Main Street, the northbound. Yeah, exactly. It's that northbound. It's the Main Street crosswalk. Yeah. And then so continuing further south, of course, there's a number of people that are walking along the sidewalk on the cannery side. Certainly some others on the other, but greater amount, of course, for where the destination is on the west side there. But something that sort of jumped out to all of us was the lack of people actually jaywalking between, or I shouldn't say jaywalking, but walking and crossing at the parking lot entrance there, the southerly cannery driveway. Only counted 3 during these peak hours. Now, one of the things that could be said about that is it is a peak hour. It's the most congested, if you will, hour of the day. So when cars are at their peak, you're going to have the most queuing, you're going to have the most volume, so people are less likely to make that movement. So perhaps during an off-peak time, particularly maybe later in the evening, people are going to be more apt to make that crossing. That could certainly occur. And of course, when 75 North Main comes online, fully redeveloped, that's going to be a destination on that location right there, which of course right now, what we're seeing here is that most people are parking, if they do, on the east side and actually using the crosswalk, which was certainly a comment made in the survey that people didn't find any issue using the crosswalks when necessary. But that again speaks to what that latent demand is like, what that latent demand is going to be like. And so between 75 North Main, the parking lot, there's going to be a demand of that desire line is going to be right there. And so that's going to have to be a very big topic of conversation for that meeting on Thursday and moving forward as CPL goes through these designs of what can we do here? Can we actually get away with a new crossing here? Because especially we heard loud and clear from the public, they desire some new crossing opportunity between High Street and tracks. And I would even say even further south than that, because you've got of course, right, TJ Ryan's, you've got RB&E, the parking lot entrance there, you've got a lot of activity there. Myself as a resident, it's a frequent crossing location for me. And I'm sure, and I certainly see others doing it as well. So,
Am I correct that when the demographic of the respondents was that like 35% are village residents, or something like that?
yeah.
38, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, thereabouts.
Yeah.
In the mid-30s, and it's interesting that there's that many comments from about crosswalks and walking, and I don't think it was all from village residents. I was thinking other people are using other parking lots and are traversing the village.
Yeah. Yeah, and we want to be.
Right.
Yeah, and ultimately we want to be. I mean, this speaks more of the village concern or topic, but we want to be a community that's Park One's community, and
We've become a destination, so.
absolutely. And that was one of the conversation pieces that we had last week, was that this is not just a bedroom community anymore. It's a destination. We talked about, I think a little while back, Iron Smoke. I mean, every bottle that goes out of that place is Fairport on it.
Yep.
Yes, this is now a destination, and the word is spreading quickly. And it's a great moment right now.
A Park One's community. I haven't heard that phrase before. I'm surprised at how many people like by Parks Avenue are crossing and up north.
Right.
Yeah,
I guess
I
I was like, oh, where are they all parking and coming from? Or is that just maybe folks who live there coming here?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. I think there's the folks up in the neighborhood up there. You're getting
that 13 number right there. That seems like a weird place to cross. Like everybody coming down High Street, or I don't know. It's just interesting the numbers and trying to see the flow of people coming in. Like are they parked somewhere or what?
I know. It was, we'd spent a good amount of time going through everything.
Yeah.
And because when I struggled I kept saying, well, but what does this mean to our North Main parking lot? And Peter said, you've proven people are behaving safely right now. So if we're bringing others there, because that was my concern. If we bring another 100 people here, how are we going to get them across the street safely? But this demonstrates that people that park in our lot generally are comfortable walking up to the crosswalk and crossing over. It will change with 75 North Main, but it confirms that, someone suggested maybe lighting and signage to make it an more attractive trip to the crosswalk. Sure,
Mhm.
those are all good things, but my concern was that these numbers were going to be flipped, that people were just heading
Well,
across
my
the street.
good question is 6 o'clock peak on that time, that it's busy and the parking lot's filling up and there's parking coming in and out with picking up kids and all of that stuff happening. But I'm thinking that the parking lot actually fills and then we become the overflow parking a little later in the evening. And I don't know if you saw that. I mean, how many people did we do traffic counts for parking in our parking lot during this similar period?
Well, we did the counts 4 to 6, both on Friday and Saturday, and we counted every driveway between 75 North Main, both sides, so the east and west side parking lot there, all the way to the park.
But we didn't count parking.
How many cars?
No, we didn't.
How many cars were in that parking lot?
No,
And to my point, I think that happens a little later in the evening
correct. Yeah,
than
and
6 o'clock.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see, probably
People
not
are
everybody's
crossing.
behavior.
Right.
I know.
If you do this 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock on that Friday night, there's no way that there's 3 total people crossing right there.
Right.
And again, that's anecdotal, this is data, but agreed, it's the bar crowd and the leaving dinner crowd.
Right.
Believing,
Still surprised that this is that low between that
even
window,
at 6, yeah.
4 to 6.
Yeah.
Well, I think David, we were struggling with the standard. DOT has very specific time. They count peak times, right?
They do. I mean, I know that when we were scoping this,
You originally had it
I
at
had some more hours in there. Now, it's certainly something that if we wanted to,
I think that that's going to be a value to us because there is a peak parking time, it
You
goes
need our lot
beyond.
to be full, right?
Yeah. And that's fine. I mean, we Martha, you sent out, I think, a nice little notice that, how we did this was we have our own cameras. We set them out there, the signs there, and just, collected our data right from that. So, that's nothing for us to be able to go back out here, spend 15 minutes, set up cameras on Friday night, and then, just turn them on to count for those 2 hours.
Yeah, I think that would be a value.
Okay.
Yeah, there's.
Do you want to
comments
be
in here about-
specific about what data are we asking them to go out?
Well, we're going to build a
Friday nights.
we're going to build a parking lot and we're looking for a place or what can we do with crosswalks? And the anticipation is that our parking lot is going to get filled up.
Mhm.
So you're going to have a bunch of people leaving our parking lot headed towards the cannery. Where are they going? How are they doing it? I think
Okay.
that's the real, so are they, David said we didn't have a lot of jaywalkers or whatever, or is there a jaywalking path that people are choosing to use that might be better served as a crossing?
Well, what is that time we want to capture? Friday night?
I'll tell you, Thursday
Saturday.
nights even too.
Or Thursday?
You did Thursday, Friday, or no, you did Friday,
I
Saturday.
did Friday, Saturday, but yeah, Thursdays, especially now with the NFL season starting to kick off.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Oh,
they
right.
cross the
Right.
airport, or excuse me, Village Inn.
Yeah.
What
So-
window do you need? How many hours do you put in a window?
We typically do 2, but
Okay.
yeah, so I think, that kind of like, 8 to 10, we do even 7 to 9.
7 to 9, probably,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe, you guys.
Because they just kind of get you more of the problem issues documented.
My 2 cents, I would think 7 to 9, because
Yeah.
you need the overlap of D1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
I mean, if you think 7 to 9 by 9, you're probably,
D1's done.
your destinations to the taverns are
Right.
probably at
You're
their
clearing
peak
out
hours.
that first.
But you don't want to miss D1's influence.
Right.
So we would ask them to go out and do 2 more days, a Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
7 to 9.
Donna, you wanted to weigh in on something?
No, I was just saying, there was comments that like somebody was saying, like, I have a problem finding parking during the day.
Oh, right.
And stuff, so I think it supports the, let's go out and do it, account later.
What
Yeah,
if-
we can, and we could focus that one specifically on pedestrian pedestrian volumes instead of, worrying about vehicles at that point.
Right, no,
Sure.
other than parking, we want to get a snapshot of something, of how many cars are parked there.
Well, you haven't done a parking study. We don't count,
No,
none of our,
we weren't doing a parking study. However, that's something though, we could easily do if we wanted to set this up now and go out there, just do the ones through at that time, and then we've got all the video for the ins and outs.
Right.
So we
Okay,
know
I'm just-
what the
I think,
surplus and deficit is.
all right, so
That's no big deal.
would you come back to us with a proposal to count the parking and do 2 more observations?
yeah, just in our parking lot,
Yeah.
we're not counting.
Not the cannery,
canneries,
just-
but
Yeah.
we know that if they're parking on our side, it's full over there.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
and it's a moving target, right? Because the old Campania building,
Right.
when something is back in there, that's gonna be an impact. The 75 North Main is absolutely gonna be an impact.
Yes,
Where it's only gonna get heavier.
right,
Yeah.
right.
What is in our control to do? So we have all this info. Martha, you had mentioned timing of lights is something
Right.
we could do, signage,
Lighting,
lighting. So those are the things as O said, like we could have control of while we wait for the streetscape to.
right.
Yeah, but I think there's a good conversation to be had that, given where your lot is, where the conceptual crosswalk was placed way back when, at the southerly driveway location, that's the most likely location, or the most, outside of doing a railroad street location right at the rail. That's a good mid-block location. That's literally about 210 feet or so away from the crosswalk currently at High Street. And the segment that is between High Street and the tracks is about 450 feet or so. So that literally is smack dab in the middle. That would be the desire line. And that's a location that is ideal enough where it's certainly at a somewhat of an intersection where DOT, if you want to put one in, you got to look for, try to get those pedestrian counts out of it. But it's at a spot that you can certainly do some nice enhancements. You've got a lot of pavement out there, so you can do something if they were to entertain some sort of curb extensions like.
But that would be as part of the streetscape project,
It would be.
right?
It would
so-
be, but it's also, if you're talking about it from a parking lot expansion, it is sort of an impact on the streetscape aspect and it would be something that, if you had to go through other channels or other reviews to do this project, that could be something that would have come out of it. It would be an improvement that would be
But-
necessary.
It's not a simple matter as just laying down a crosswalk, don't you know?
No,
I mean, you cannot have curbs, right? We need a curb cut
you
on
need-
either side, so you're gonna have to either line up with existing curb cuts or do a curb cut, correct? For
We have to
ADA
do
compliance.
ADA accessibility ramps.
So it's not just a matter of throwing stripes down. Correct.
But in the interim, one of what is within our control, we wouldn't have to wait to till streetscape, say, to ask DOT to consider the timing on the light, to give pedestrians longer to cross.
Yeah.
There's signage. I just stuck out some used crosswalk signs, but there's probably a nicer way to do that. People said make it
But that has to be initiated by the village.
well, I'm thinking within our footprint. Within our footprint, where the green space is currently, we own up to the sidewalk.
What are we talking about? I
So
was
north
talking
of-
about the timing of the light.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah.
The village would have, but we don't
Oh,
go,
yeah.
OSED doesn't go to
Oh, no.
DOT and say.
No,
"We want this."
no,
The
but
The village
we
has to
would
get on
recommend-
board and
yes.
to the village. and
Oh, yes,
Then they go
yes,
with
yes,
supporting documentation from David or
Yes.
CPL. or
Yes.
whatever they choose.
yes. But then within our current green space, where the new signage went up and so forth, there's
More stuff there.
we could
Okay.
be mindful of the lighting could we improve the lighting at the sidewalk?
Right.
We're talking about putting lighting farther out. I haven't even thought of what's happening between, should there be improvements there, that type of thing. Are there things we can do ahead of the streetscape that's within
I
our
would say
control?
look to Andrew and me, but I would say, there's some really nice, and depending on what the width out there and the clearance on the sidewalk is, you could do some nice, temporary type, installations with planters or something like that, just to, basically, you're putting up a barrier to
Yeah.
force people to walk.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, and,
Yeah.
And a cattle shoot.
Exactly.
There you
Without putting up, those movable metal fencings, during events, you could do something a little nicer, depending on what kind of clearance you might have.
Yeah.
Really encourage that.
That's a great, yeah.
Mhm. Good stuff.
Yes. Donna?
I have one comment. I wanted to ask, so there's a lot of comments about the pickleball place. Has, they had to go through any review or permitting process with the village?
Yes. Oh, certainly they have, yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
and I assume there's some parking point on that review, like we had with Ace Financial?
No.
We knew,
There's
no?
nothing.
The
Sorry.
parking was established when the project came forward. And the parking calculations were based on proposed occupancies. And then the planning board approved the site plan, and I'm not a planner, but approved a site plan that did include a parking waiver of a certain number of spaces, because they actually calculated the number of spaces that would be required for the proposed uses.
But they did go back to planning for the newest improvements between the brewery.
They went
Peter,
back
do you know this?
facade.
I'm looking at you, Chris. So you have a.
I think David,
Well,
between David and I, we know enough to be dangerous.
And I know just a little less.
But no, Donna's asking the question that everybody is asking. So-
When they got the parking for the waiver,
It was
restaurants, business.
office and
Correct.
restaurants.
Yeah, office and restaurant, and we assume day use versus evening use. But a pickleball court could be 24-hour use or,
So to answer Donna's question, I do not know the answer to that
okay.
question specific. What I do know, the history of that is if you go back to 2018, 2019, 75 North Main and the cannery, which at that time was 25 Parks Ave, they received a joint parking waiver for both projects, as Martha mentioned, based on anticipated occupancy as to what types of occupancy.
Right.
And the village parking code basically breaks down parking demand based on type of occupancy and calculated occupancy. So it comes back to the building department. Then 25 Parks Ave, the cannery gets developed, and it's actually stayed pretty true to what the anticipated uses were in there.
25 parks.
Yes,
Yes.
the number of restaurants,
Yeah.
the athletic space, they've actually stayed pretty true to what was anticipated. In 2021, 2022, there was a modification to the site plan for 75 North Main. And the site plan modifications was based upon restaurant uses and office uses, and then they were basically establishing where doorways were. So that's where the site plan improvements were coming in. At that time, the planning board revisited the parking waiver and said, yes, everything still aligns with the original waiver given. Okay? That's the limits of BME's involvement. We were the engineer for the original cannery developer. That's been the limits of our involvement. I just know now, go to David, because David sits on the planning board. I know they've been there most recently for facade only changes. I'm not aware of them ever addressing the fact that there's been that change of anticipated use. But David, I don't want
Yeah, no, the most
to
recent,
speak out of turn.
yeah, no, you're correct. The most recent meeting was to deal with facade changes and signage. So that was where we stuck.
Okay, now you have the answer, but everybody's asking you that question too.
But as it relates to
The biggest, it is like the biggest question I hear.
But I think what's interesting, I Martha, David, and I talked about this last week, and I do think it is something OSIT has to think about. And that is this parking lot expansion plan that you're about to embark upon is gonna add a net of, about 55 spaces. I counted again, Mark, today, Mark. It's gonna add a net of 55 spaces.
Now, is that, okay,
Beyond,
beyond what is beyond
Gravel.
the gravel stage,
Yep, we assumed a certain number of spots in the current gravelled area, that's
which is
basically
non-efficient?
double loaded.
Yep,
And,
yep.
and we added on top of it, because the plan, for instance, now calls for 97 new asphalt spaces. We're saying about, right now, you're probably getting 40 to 45 cars in the gravel area today. So we're saying you're gonna net 50 to 55. Now, I think what's interesting though in this, you're doing this to address the current
Right.
parking issue. And what do you do when the next user comes in and says, we're gonna, this is our parking demand, this is what we're providing. Oh, but don't worry about it. The village, and they're gonna say the village added 55 spaces at the end, so that covers us, that's our waiver. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Is the fact that you're doing this to address a current
Which,
deficit in parking.
and it's also doing and dealing with an unoccupied space.
Exactly.
Retail spaces that will be a restaurant, it will be a retail. use,
Correct,
right there,
correct.
that was formerly their parking.
Like
That's
totally
right. And
unoccupied.
so I guess what I'm saying is we have somehow, I believe, OSIT somehow has to convey to the village of going, we're putting these spaces in. But,
This is not the solution.
right. And so be careful who don't, sounds weird to say this, don't allocate this to some business that goes in on High Street that's short of parking, says, well, geez, there's 50 new spaces, so can I get my waiver based on that? That's because you nailed it. I mean, right now, right, the building right now is empty, the old Campagna space. And what happens when they are
Do they have
occupied?
to just be, I mean, this is a really dumb question. Do they have to just be public spaces, or can you put signage up saying to serve the businesses over there? It wouldn't do anything. I know nobody would listen to them. But is there a way to allocate like who the parking is for in some way?
We talk a little bit about that, and it's just hard to.
Yeah, I don't know
enforce
how
that.
you'd enforce
There are-
it.
there's certainly-
Unenforceable, I mean,
Yeah, and there's certainly little plazas that try to do that.
Right.
And you might have even a parking map outside that says, these are spaces for X tenant, Y
Your
tenant.
parking lot is signed like that, and that's a private lot.
Right, yeah.
because the pickleball folks can't complain about not wanting to walk from their parking spot.
Right.
because they're- Yeah.
One of the things we also talked about was, and you were gonna check a little bit and see if we could put our handicap spots. As we expand, you have to add more handicap spots. If we can put them in the lot across the street, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you this.
Because the destination for those people is across the street. When we own we own like the first 35 spaces on the west side,
Oh, really?
right next to the Village Inn.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So we
Okay.
were trying to be clever about where we put our additional
Yeah,
handicap.
that's the
That
only
is a
public,
really
that's
interesting
the only
idea.
public
Yeah,
parking.
which makes sense that would be the accessible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Andrew
could
just
put-
told me we can't do it.
Oh, yeah.
well, we can't, but we should,
But.
but we could also put more there anyhow.
That's
You
true,
can't.
yes.
You can't make it all. How
Independent
come you
of the
can't make it all?
The way the accessibility law is written, any particular area of parking, if you have 20 spaces here separated by a building, another 20 spaces separated by something, and another 20 spaces, each one of those separate 20 spaces has to be counted individually. So I'll have to have an accessible space there, accessible space there, and accessible space
Oh, so
here.
we
I can't say
You can't
that I have
aggregate.
60
Okay.
parking
Got it.
spaces.
we'd have to have accessible spaces in our other parking lot as well,
Right.
accounted
Yes,
for.
you have to account for,
Yeah.
the number of accessible spaces based upon the number of parking spaces you have in that area.
And we did count for that when we did our first expansion.
Yes.
We already have the grade level on the north side near
Yep.
Tony's building. It's just not striped yet. So adding in handicap on that side will be easy peasy. But some of the comments that came up, we might want to think of adding a few more
Right.
on our own spaces
Yeah.
over there, maybe.
We're required to have electric spaces.
Well, there's the other
Yeah.
thing is the electric took out. But we are progressive.
Oh, I just read that Caboose took out spaces.
I really, here it goes.
But let's not say the P word.
I mean, I do think to your point that we have a role, like I was go back to this, right? Our role, in my perception is that our role of supporting a net gain in parking spaces is to support the investments that we've
Right.
made in businesses there.
Right.
I don't want to say we're excluding the pickleball court because we haven't invested in the pickleball court. I mean, it's like, you might go play pickleball, then go have a beer. Like, I don't know, like that's supporting our businesses as well. But there's a part where there's a gray line where what we're trying to do with that net parking gain is not necessarily the same thing that we want the village to address with the whole bigger problem of sufficient parking in the village.
Right.
Yeah, well said. All right, anything else we want to continue on with this? So David does have some marching orders going to get you the quote, and we will authorize the executive director to review and enter into a contract with them.
Yes,
We need a motion.
Can we do it that way? Or,
Well-
I mean, is there at something less, no, I don't need to go there, but not to exceed, but
You could do something like that, but
I could go, we're not gonna, short of asking, what do you think it's, what ballpark it for us?
you could do
Can we
that to
do it-
exceed 5,000.
But could we do it in a way that I'm authorized to execute it, provided I share it with the board and no one objects?
You could do
Does that work?
without objection.
Without objection?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sound good? You want to, okay. Okay, good. Let's
So
have a
that was-
motion.
So that sounded like somebody's motion.
How do we word that motion?
Donna so moved, authorize the executive director to enter into a contract with Passero Associates to conduct another pedestrian count, and a new service is a parking count of our parking lot at one time during those hours,
At a cost
at a cost
without objection to the,
that it is not objected to by the board.
Lovely.
never written contract.
You gotta say.
Okay, but one of our lawyers.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Okay, any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Good.
I will
Thank
say
you, everybody.
it's been a pleasure working with everyone here, and we could go on for hours.
It's a fun time to be in this area.
Yes,
Right.
yes. So we'll see you Thursday.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Who's the-
Rob was the second. Yes. Great, thank you.
All right, so still have old business, website update.
We're live. Yay, finally. We went live last Thursday, and I didn't talk about it to anybody, didn't announce it or anything, because I wanted to let it settle in and just see how it was gonna behave. So far, it's no issues at all. They've been, Black Dog was there as I launched, and little things, that got changed out. It seems to be functioning okay. I got an email from somebody from Section 8 trying to check the wait list. Somehow he got there and couldn't figure out, well, he couldn't find that, but I think he bailed immediately to contact us. But it works. I mean, there's people trying it and using it. I'm still working on, I had 79 agendas and 157 minutes, so I'm narrowing the
Oh,
gap.
wow, geez.
Trying to, you do the bulk upload and then gotta
Yeah.
fill them out. But hopefully I'll have an admin soon that I can task with that, and we'll talk about that. But it's out there. Let us know what you see. We're still tweaking a few things, like I wanted the agendas to be available when there's a board calendar, to have that agenda right there. Let us know what you think. So
far, I think the usability of it's really nice. I like the
Oh.
residence section, like you know where to go on it. It's like, I
That's-
just live in the village and I think it'd be cool. There's where you go.
Okay,
Business
good.
owner, there you go.
see, I'm too close to it now. I can't. It's not even thrilling for me anymore.
Well, off the cuff, it felt intuitive, the
That's
layout.
great.
Nice.
Good.
I just texted you an image that I took. Just a screen,
Oh, you
a
texted
picture of
me?
of a screenshot that I took. I just texted you right now.
Okay.
And I wasn't sure if it was intentional or not, but on the landing page,
Mm-hmm.
you scroll down a little bit, it's right above the success stories.
Yes. This one?
There's this option of document, you got document library, business resources, and resident resources.
Yes.
It looked like the document library icon was a little bit larger than the other two.
Oh,
I
okay.
wasn't sure if that was intentional.
No, I don't like the look of that. I'll
Caught my eye.
fix that. Yep.
But just,
I think that, yeah,
I'll
I
take
see
more
it.
time and click through, but
Yeah.
Yep. We can take care of that. Yep.
that was one that jumped out, but I agree. I think it looks good. It's hard to accomplish a lot of goals with that, or like with a landing page, like we talked about, getting the individual organizations that form OSED sooner to the eye, but there's only finite amount of space. You don't want it to be
Oh, I see
clunky,
your
you don't want it to be too busy, trying to accomplish goal A, then you make it convoluted. So I'll offer some more thoughts after I get some time
Oh,
to go
good.
through, but like I said, I think it's light years ahead of where we were.
Yes. Yes.
Your
I
point
haven't
being
been
like-
embarrassed by it anymore.
All 3 different, so people know what
Yeah, we-
organizations make us up when they say, that's the
Yeah.
point.
Just thinking of, if you're getting someone in particular on their phone, that doesn't, it's their first time going to the OSED site, but they are most interested in something, right? They're maybe
Right.
not interested in OSED, they're interested in
Front porch grant.
a grant
right.
or you are,
Which is
whatever
more
it may
likely
be.
what's gonna occur, right?
Getting them quickly to ascertain, all right, I'm here, how do I get there? How to get
And
that more narrow point?
I don't know whether a front porch grant comes from, I don't know even how to spell IDA.
Right, right.
Is it from that?
I don't think that- Does it matter which company or that they can find, or
Right,
which
yeah,
organization, right?
But if our social media efforts are doing what we want them to do, they're gonna be on their phone before they're on that laptop, is my thought.
Right,
The
having that
vast
mobile.
majority of humans that would be looking at something like that.
Totally.
But yeah, I like it.
Good. And we had engaged Black Dog for some social media, and we are getting some traction. I think our Facebook following is growing. There's likes and all that kind of stuff on our Instagram. Our newsletter will be out next Monday again. That has a mailing list of over 600 people.
Like snail mail or email?
Email,
Okay.
I'm sorry. So we're plugging along, really. So it's good stuff.
And I feel like the text you sent me this morning said, like, from OSED. Was that a thing too?
Oh, I don't recall. A text this morning, was it
Oh,
about?
yeah, I like that.
Yeah, the ones you sent
Yeah.
out, the package.
Or you named our group, at least in your, you
Oh.
named our group of,
That's Jennifer, you
Oh,
made
that
the
was the
group.
group?
oh, I did name it, that's, and my
I-
phone, well, cause I'm like,
oh, wow.
I know.
I didn't realize if I named it, it would come up
I
on your
did the
guys.
same
Good
thing
thing
on
I
my.
named it OSED and not like,
Yes, I see. Right.
sorry.
Yes, but we are still live streaming, so maybe we want to.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So any other website conversation? Any other old business for the idea?
I don't have.
New business, we have a property use request. We have the letter in front of us.
Right.
trustees and Martha met. Well, so the letter itself is self-explanatory.
Right.
Everybody's had a chance to
Right.
read it. Martha had thoughts on it that she shared with me that I thought were very poignant.
When you consider this request to use our parking lot for the Steel Rail Festival 2024, what that does is effectively removes all public parking north of the railroad. And I think for that for reason alone, we cannot approve that request.
Yeah, there's,
I mean, to Donna's point, I mean, the folks that we're looking to support necessarily aren't going to get impacted by that.
But I'm okay, with, additional discussion. As you know, it's been held on the cannery on private parking.
Is that where it was before?
Yep, for 2
they've
years
done
now.
2 years.
It looks like you maybe already had some communications with him to that point, so it looks like he had a
Yes,
response to you. Okay.
But they also had a conversation about moving it down to Fairport Junction.
Okay.
That was a while ago. Remember the deal with the permits that were being issued?
Oh, yes. Mhm.
Permits could be issued.
Yeah. So, okay, but we did receive the request, we considered it, but I'd recommend to the board that.
I agree.
Okay, great. Thank you.
This other one,
Yeah, this was just something that, I do like my data. I think data is important when we're moving forward with things. Ed brought this to my attention. One of Livingston County Economic Development uses this Placer AI data. Believe me, there's lots more. I tried to tease out just a few things for you. But they use completely anonymous data gathered through things like your weather app and so forth. There's no personally identifiable information, but literally they are counting people and tracking.
cookies go.
That's cookies, yeah.
Cookies.
And
I'm
tracking
not happy with that.
movements. And
Well, now you know where it goes.
one of the things we took a look at with the gentleman I'm working with is here at the Village Landing in 2019, they had 623 visits to the plaza, 113 unique visitors. And if you go to the next page, in 2021, they have over 715 visits. So we did a project at the plaza. We are, in my mind, this information helps us tell our story and also helps us attract additional businesses and so forth. This is not inexpensive data, but it's something I'm looking at and trying to partner possibly with GRVA has Placer, as well as Rochester Downtown Development Corporation, trying to find out if I can get a seat on that type of thing. But there's the demographic data that's available is astounding. You can also find out, and I didn't include this page, I don't know why, but where people came from prior to their visit and where they went to afterwards, literally. We're all being tracked. But in Livingston County, this is also good information for us in our grant applications when you have data behind you rather than anecdotal. But I found this was a fun thing for me to get involved with, tracking retail, finding out where leakage, what people are leaving the village for, and trying to track that here. We can also do events. So if you wanted to measure the impact of the Fairport Music Festival, we could really get some incredible data on that, or the Canal Days and so on and so forth, about where people are coming from, how long they're staying, what times they're coming. So just kind of, someday when I have some time, looking through other ways to be innovative and collaborative, because that's what we are, that's our new branding. And working with GTC, is an incredible resource. And I want to be doing more of that. So just putting that in for FYI. Okay.
Any other new business for anyone?
I have nothing, Chair.
Motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That's a good one.
Yeah. Lots of good, we do good things.